Dave Rubin has had his political awakening in which he went from being a lefty to a classical liberal, which he defined when talking to Ben Shapiro as libertarian or conservative in many respects, which it is. Classical liberalism is libertarianism. Was essentially started by Herbert Spencer. He wanted to euthanize the poor. He essentially, said, oh, the people who are trying to help the poor are not doing a good thing. We need to have them die off because of survival of the fittest. Yes, that is right. But Dave Rubin was a host on the Young Turks. He was on there. That gives him major extra points among the right wing because you go, oh, you see Dave Rubin right here? He was a lefty. He was a liberal. He was on the Young Turks. He's got all the previous left-wing accolades, but hey, he had a political awakening. He had an epiphany. So now we're going to bring him on PragerU. We're going to bring him on, Steven Crowder's show. We're going to have Ben Shapiro be all this other stuff, right? All of this other stuff. Now, what we're going to be seeing is Cenk Uygur went after Dave Rubin. He called him out while covering the story about Joe Rogan. Alex Jones going after Joe Rogan. Check it out.
One lie after another, totally unchecked. His trademark, that's what he does. I'm not sure what you're saying about the post office makes any sense. Rubin, being who he is, immediately contradicts himself because he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah, Cenk actually is correct on this one because Dave Rubin was bullshitting his way through that podcast. And to Joe Rogan's credit, as I've given him credit for what he did check Dave Rubin on a lot of his stuff. So there was multiple things. So as Cenk talks about, there was the USPS thing where Joe Rogan's like, the prices are going to go way up. And that, the funniest part about that was Dave Rubin was given an example of what UPS can do for him that was great. But then Joe Rogan goes on to say, dude, that's the thing that the USPS does. That's what the U.S. Postal Service does. Only they do it. So he basically got debunked on the Postal Service. By the way, Postal Service is actually one of the outright things outlined in the Constitution, which is interesting. But also other things, self-regulation. He was trying to give props to the intellectual idea that things will self-regulate and that people have a vested interest in doing good work. And Joe Rogan, because he had personal experience in construction, was able to say, no, these people are often very shady, shifty, shitty people who just grift and try to cut corners as much as possible. And he goes, that these problems don't always manifest right away. In fact, most of the times they don't. Most of the times you have these, building codes that just end up being whatever, and then some problem that will manifest in 10 years. Why would they care about that? That's so long from now, they can't even think about that. I mean, think about the way a lot of people live paycheck to paycheck. You're not thinking that far down the line. So if you cut corners like that, it's a great situation for them. But Joe Rogan was just completely checked him on that. And it's interesting to see Cenk Uygur going after Dave Rubin. I think this is the first time that Cenk Uygur has addressed Dave Rubin. Someone can correct me on that if I'm wrong. I think that this is the first time. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this down below.